Hi, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Dan Knows Everything About Sports. I am your host, Dan. And despite the name, I don't actually claim that I know everything. I just do my homework and try not to gas bag or do the quote unquote hot takes of today. Today, we will be talking about one of the busiest NBA off seasons in recent memory and see if I know everything that there is to know. Pass it on to you about the wildest trades. And yes, I will be giving you my thoughts and my speculations on Boston's direction. My God, was that just out of left field? But without further delay, let's get into it and start with the biggest NBA trade so far of the offseason. The initial one, the one that got the ball rolling, that, in my opinion, was the snowball that basically came downhill and started the avalanche that has been this NBA offseason. Giannis Antetokounmpo to Miami. The Greek Freak leaving Milwaukee, taking his talents to South Beach. If you've been living under a rock, this is just your update, especially if you're on here on YouTube, giving us a listen while you work or do whatever it is you're doing for background noise. Let's break it down real quick. What exactly has changed here? The trade itself. Miami is trading Tyler Hero, Jacquez Jr., Khalil Ware, and Joaquin Chunis, along with 3 first-round picks, a first-round pick swap, ooh la la, and a useless second-rounder that was thrown in for whatever reason, maybe just because Milwaukee wanted it. But in return, Miami will be receiving the talents of Giannis Antetokounmpo and Bobby Porter to pair up with Bam Adebayo. This is a pretty decent trade, just from my perspective, from what I've seen. I mean, it definitely helps Miami in the short term, not the long term. However, Milwaukee making out, in my opinion, like bandits, getting a lot younger, a lot more talent that you can develop going into the future, as well as those 3 first-round picks and the pick swap. My question, just going to throw it out there, leave me your answer in the comments. If you're Milwaukee, does the second-round pick in this trade even matter? Do you still make the trade? Was the second-round pick what got them over the hump to trade their franchise player down to Miami? The implications of this are massive, and we've seen over the last almost 2 weeks since this trade the domino effect that it's caused throughout the NBA. Miami has definitely gotten better in the short term, like I said. I mean, now they're pairing up Giannis with Bam. They're going to have Bobby Portis. So their front court pretty well established if they remain healthy, which is always the big question and speculation that most teams have going into any season. It's always that looming injury bug that you can be one step away from being the number 2 seed versus then going into the play-in, depending on the health and well-being, especially of Giannis. Because if Giannis goes down, it's all bets are off. This was obviously a terrible trade, but we're not here to break that down. Once that trade happened, though, this is what that trade led to. You have Boston and Miami jockeying for position over the coming days prior to this, where Boston is readily putting it out there. Hey, we're willing to give you, of all people on our roster, we're willing to give you Jaylen Brown, our finals MVP, a guy who we drafted 10 years ago and developed him into one of the best defenders in the league, one of the best players in the league, arguably top 5 shooting guard, and we're willing to trade him plus picks. And just when it looked like maybe Milwaukee was entertaining that idea of like, well, we can get Jaylen Brown. That's enticing. We can get these picks. Miami comes out of left field, and you have to think that this has good old-fashioned hate written all over it. The fact that Miami comes in and basically says to Milwaukee, hey, instead of sending your best player to the Boston Celtics and making them a contender like they need it, instead of doing that, we'll give you our entire team just so you don't send him to Boston. And that's exactly what they did. They pretty much mortgaged their future, Miami did, to go ahead and get Giannis. And you have to think Pat Riley is sitting there right now in Miami, and he's lighting a big fat Cuban cigar, and he's sipping on whatever fine liqueur he feels he is deserved. Because that is the person who initiates this trade that robs Boston of getting one of the best generational players of the last 10 years. That's what this comes down to, this trade, from the facts of the matter and just what Miami was willing to give up to get him there. This has Pat Riley hates that damn leprechaun written all over it. And not only did Pat Riley get the player he wanted, because he is obviously fed up with trying to get them to build these young players around Bam to become a playoff contender, which they haven't been for a while. This causes a snowball effect, because if you believe everything that was put out there in the, ether of the NBA universe, and there's a lot of gas bagging, and there's a lot of speculation, and there's a lot of he said, she said, they said, whatever. This had an immense impact, this trade, because it was prior to the draft. Once that goes down, a lot of the other players who were speculated to be involved in that trade or around it, they start getting moved, because now you end up hearing, okay, Giannis is in Miami. What's the next big trade? Well, then it comes out, well, now Jaylen Brown, since he was offered up, teams might be intrigued to see if Boston, since they were willing to trade him for Giannis, hey, is he available? And you start hearing the rumors. And the next big rumor is, will he go to Portland? Because Portland is interested in what they can get for the services of one Jaylen Brown. Does that trade go through? No. Instead, Portland backs out from everything we've read, and instead they trade for embattled guard Ja Morant, and they're sending Chris Murray and Jeremy Grant to Memphis. That's it. That's all they're trading. No picks involved, for the services of Ja Morant, who hasn't been healthy the last couple seasons, whether it be through injury or through the personal issues. But we're not here, nor are we qualified at this podcast, to break down his personal issues. And we're not going to touch that. I'll leave that for the gas bags and the people wanting to do hot takes. But Ja Morant now goes to the Trailblazers. And the Trailblazers, I mean, if you're just building a team with no forwards and guards right now, they've got a hell of a team. Because the Trailblazers trading for Ja Morant have now created a guard logjam, the likes of which I've never seen. I feel like they're hoarding all of the guards. You have a returning Damian Lillard, who, yes, he is a little bit older, but he will be available to play this season. You have Ja Morant. You have Drew Holiday at the moment. You have Scoot Henderson, and you have Sharp. You have a starting five of guards, more than I've ever seen. And if you're trying to play small ball, and maybe this is a new look in the NBA, not that I'm saying they're actually going to start all five of these guys. Obviously, that is a ridiculous notion. They're obviously going to have two forwards out there with these guys. But you have a logjam, the likes of which I've never seen. And if you do, just for fun, I think it would be hilarious if on opening day, if they still have all five of these guys that the Trailblazers throw out there, Lillard, Holiday, Henderson, Sharp, and Morant, who I believe the tallest man in that group is only 6'4". Just to show to the NBA, we're only taking 93s a game. We're not driving the lane in any way, shape, or form, or rebounding. It will just be catch and shoot all damn game. There's another question throw down into the comment section for you, the listener. I want to know, if you started Lillard, Holiday, Henderson, Morant, and Sharp, how many wins do you think the Trailblazers get with a starting five of guards? But once that trade goes through, now you have, again, the domino effect leading that you also hear that Charlotte was looking to get rid of LaMelo Ball, who was pretty much their franchise. Although they had gone out and got Knipple, and they underperformed, should have honestly made the playoffs, but they looked good together. Knipple and Ball looked like Charlotte finally had two bona fide pieces to build around, but instead, they've gone full rebuild, folks, because the other big trade that came after that, LaMelo Ball is going to Minnesota, and Minnesota sent back Naz Reid and a couple of picks. That's it. So you now have Anthony Edwards teaming up with LaMelo Ball. That's going to be intriguing to see. You're definitely going to be able to score some points with those two. So that was a destination also, Minnesota, that Jaylen Brown could have ended up in. But at the 11th hour, just a few days ago, when it did not look like Jaylen Brown was going to be moved, arguably the most questionable move that will probably be dissected the rest of this offseason, the one move that's going to be scrutinized heavily going forward, the Boston Celtics, and in my opinion, who did not need to make this trade. Let me make this perfectly clear before I say this to you, the listener. The Boston Celtics were under zero pressure to make this trade. Jaylen Brown, through this entire process, did not publicly come out. He did not privately go to the Boston Celtics. He did not publicly make it available on his Twitch account. Did not say, I want to no longer be in a Celtics uniform. Those words never came out of this man's mouth. The only thing that has been said and speculated was, and these are the facts, that the Boston Celtics felt that since they took the swing and the miss at Giannis Antetokounmpo, they felt that they needed to then trade Jaylen Brown because they didn't feel like he would want to come back in the locker room after his name was floated around in a trade like that. Which, if you read everything Jaylen Brown has said, you have seen everything that he has done, because the actions do speak louder than the words. It doesn't seem publicly like he feels that way. But because Brad Stevens and the Boston Celtics felt that they couldn't keep him after floating him around for Giannis, they have made the puzzling move to trade their number 1 or number 2 guy, depending on your opinion, and I'll leave you for that in the comments section. They trade Jaylen Brown to arguably their second or third biggest rival historically, depending on your viewpoint, the Philadelphia 76ers, a team that over the last 25 years has been, and I quote, mid. They have been mid. They have floated in the mid. They have absolutely enjoyed being nothing but mediocre, and the mediocrity that has come with that mediocre play. They haven't been able to get out of the second round. They trade that player to that team and make them exponentially better. Because here is the trade. Jaylen Brown for Paul George, 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks. Paul George. That is the return for a Finals MVP, a second-team All-NBA player, multiple-time All-Star, defensive stalwart. You can go down the list, and someone who, at the moment, is under 30. He will be 30 in the upcoming season. If you listen to the analytics people about this trade, and I need to break this one down more so than any other one, like anybody else, because this one has puzzled me. And I will be the first one to say this. I grew up a Sixers fan. And this trade even puzzles me, because if you're a video game enthusiast, go on NBA 2K right now and try to make that trade, and it will come back and say, hell no. You will have to override it for that to go through. It has zero trade logic. And I have heard the rumblings of what has come out from, leaked out of the Celtic camp, saying that they felt that they wanted to build more around Jason Tatum going forward and being a contender with him. They've always felt that he was the true number 1 on the team, and Jaylen Brown is the number 2. I disagree with that strongly, because for 17 games this season you had Jason Tatum. For the bulk of the season you had Jaylen Brown with no Jason Tatum, and you still ended up in the number 2 seed. And had there been a couple of more games the way that Detroit was playing, you probably could have ended up with the number 1 seed. And that team, who lost to said Sixers squad after blowing a 3-1 series lead, which they never do, and lost at home in Game 7, which they almost never do historically. Boston is a house of horrors for most teams in a Game 7. Go and look up the stats on your own. It is staggering what Boston does historically in a Game 7. And they lost to the elder statesman Paul George, who got in trouble this season for PEDs, who cannot play anymore, who, if you ask most people, Paul George has the absolute worst contract in sports, not even just basketball. There's another question for the comments section. Does Paul George have the worst contract in sports today? If you don't know what it is $57 million next year. And I believe another 50 or so million the year after that. He is due over $100 million the next 2 years. He's 37 years old. You cannot tell me that the picks the Sixers were offering you were that valuable that you needed to turn around and make this trade. Because if you're a Boston fan and you're listening to this, let me be clear. As someone who has a lot of Philadelphia fans in my family, we're all in agreement. You didn't need to make this trade. The notion that has come out that says he They felt he didn't need to be there anymore. Or they felt he didn't want to. Excuse me. That is draconian. That is a franchise making a panic move, trying to justify said panic move. Because if I'm even the Boston Celtics, I'm not making that trade. I don't want the Paul George contract. Because if the Sixers could have, for any of you who have ever seen the movie Semi-Pro, okay, this is a reference to that. If the Sixers could have traded Paul George for a used washing machine, they would have taken the used washing machine so fast it would have boggled your mind. They would have absolutely done that to get that bad Daryl Morey signing off the books, because that's what Paul George was a year or so ago. He was a desperation move by Daryl Morey because the Sixers were probably going to be in the play-in again because they were in cap hell. Joel's health was in question once again. You didn't have Edgecombe. You had Maxey. You had a thought that you might not even get your first overall pick because it was due to Oklahoma City, and they went out right before that, and they got Paul George thinking that would get them over the top, and it didn't. They barely played with each other because he had injury issues, and that's the other thing that I can't understand. Does Boston honestly think $57 million is worth taking that contract over, yes, the $300 million that Jaylen Brown is making? But he's in the middle of that contract. It's not like he's in the beginning of it. Because that seems to be what all of the fingers have pointed to with that particular trade. I'll go into it a little bit more. And at the end of this podcast, I'll give you my honest thoughts on that trade, because that one still is just blowing my mind, because it has now led to other things. But going forward with the rest of the signings after that, Zach LaVine opted in with the Kings, obviously, because no one else is going to pay him that amount of money. Kawhi Leonard heading back to Toronto. A lot of legal implications with that one. I know a lot of people at one point, a good friend of mine who is in the sports community turned to me and said, yeah, he's fleeing to Canada to escape legislation. That one might be accurate, but I'm not here to comment on that. This one puzzles me. Another weird trade. Miles Bridges traded out of Charlotte to the Suns for Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. Here's another question for the comments. Are the Suns just trying to build the most unlikable basketball team from a personality standpoint? I think yes. I want to know what you people think, because trading for Miles Bridges after the personal issues that man has had, and in my personal opinion, shouldn't be allowed to play in the NBA, given some of the personal issues he has done over the last couple of years involving women. He is playing with Dylan Brooks and Booker. Are they now the most unlikable trio? Had they kept Grayson Allen, I feel like that would have put them over the top, and they were just playing scumbag basketball at that point. But moving on, also, you have Andre Drummond leaving the Sixers and going to the Knicks, which, if you're a Knicks fan, do you even care? Do you even care what they do right now? Do you even care if they tank next year? They've won a championship for the first time in 53 years. Do you honestly care who they sign? They get Andre Drummond. The Lakers trade DeAndre Ayton, boring, to the Washington Wizards. Probably for a song. Who cares on that one? Tim Hardaway Jr. to the Heat. I actually like that signing for the Heat. I think that's great. They're building up their bench. Let's see who else they can get. Mitchell Robinson leaving and going to Boston. Interesting. Definitely going to pair him up with Jason Tatum. You're also going to have, again, you're going to have a starting three of Tatum, Mitchell Robinson, and you have to think Paul George. Let's see how that plays out. Some of the more low-key moves that I actually like here. The Spurs get Tobias Harris. Does that put the Spurs over the top? We'll wait and see. I think so. I think that's a great move for the Spurs, adding him in. Seeing him play in Philadelphia for a long time, though, I also know this, like Detroit found out, much like the Clippers know about Tobias Harris. When Tobias Harris is on, you love having Tobias Harris. But when Tobias Harris is off, my God, do you want to forget the name Tobias Harris? Because he will have a game where you're like, wow, he's got 22 and 8 assists and 8 rebounds. Wow, he absolutely was so worth that max contract. And then the next game, he'll have 5 points, 1 assist, and he'll barely look like he's even been involved in the game. So we'll see which Tobias Harris shows up there. But the Sixers weren't done either after they make that giant trade, which I'm going to break down their roster right now as of today. Your starting 5, they go out, they get Dean Wade, great D-wing from Cavaliers. They lure him away. They also go out, they sign Caleb Love for bench depth, and they get Anthony Simons, who, that is a steal signing, if you ask me. So your starting 5 as of right now for the Philadelphia 76ers going into next season. If healthy, you have Joel Embiid. If healthy, and that's a big if, and he is probably now the biggest question mark of that team when he once upon a time was not. Pairing up with Dean Wade, and then Brown, Edgecombe, and Maxey. What a guard trio you have. Because Maxey is about to hit his prime. Jaylen Brown is in his prime. Joel probably at the tail end of it, if he can just keep the injury bug away from him for most of the season. He is going to get injured, folks. If you are a Sixers fan and you're listening to this, I'm telling you right now, he is going to get injured. He is not going to play 70 games. You just hope his injuries are minor. They are manageable with the team you have right now, and you just hope that they're all in November and December and not in April and May when they seem to pop up the most. You're going to have Dean Wade. You're going to have that. That's a pretty damn good squad right there to go out there. It's definitely, in my opinion, I'll leave it to you in the comments. Here's another comment question for you today. We got a bunch of them. I want to hear from you. Does this starting 5, as the Sixers are right now, are they the 3rd best team in the East? I believe so. I think they have surpassed Boston. Boston is a 5th and 6th seeded team right now in this East. Because outside of Detroit, who are young, they are hungry, they are going to come back strong. You obviously have to contend with the Knicks. But Boston has imploded themselves. Are even the Sixers the number 2 or number 1 team? What do you think, given where they're at right now? I know the speculation about LeBron. That's a different podcast, and we're going to talk about it on that episode and break that down prior to what his decision's probably going to be. Decision 4.0, 5.0, whatever we're at now. And I know the Sixers, like the Celtics, like a bunch of other teams, they are linked to LeBron. I'm talking right now, the way that they are constructed. They still need, in my opinion, to replace Andre Drummond, who was a very capable backup at times with Joel being injured. They're still going to have to go out and do that. Now, I know Hachimura, as of this taping of this podcast, he is available. Would that fit? Would he take a big pay cut to go to Philadelphia and help them possibly win? Who knows? But the other, to just finish up here on the free agent signings and some of the deals that have gone down, there's two minor ones that I saw that intrigue me. And I want to know what you guys think of this. There are coaching changes. One of the most respected coaches in college basketball for a time, and over the last 15 years or so, Billy Donovan, shockingly, is leaving the head coaching space. And instead of going back to, a head coach, he had a position in Chicago. He elected to leave because of the state the Bulls are in right now as a franchise, which is, God help them. He chose to leave. He chose to part ways. He goes back to OKC as an assistant. He's going to be an assistant coach there. Do you feel that makes them better? I think that's intriguing to see him go back there. But the big one, to me, given his track record as an assistant coach, and I know people at this point in this podcast are probably, you are talking about an assistant coaching signing on a Monday. What are you doing with your life? This one's intriguing to me. This shows me, in my opinion, that they're trying to build something. The Washington Wizards have brought in Sir Patrick Ewing to be an assistant coach. I like that for them. I actually love that signing. And the reason why I love that signing is if you go back, and I'm not saying his head coaching career is perfect, it really isn't, but if you look at Patrick Ewing as an assistant coach and look at the players that he's worked with, he has helped produce a multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year, because when he was coaching as the assistant coach in Orlando, go look at what he did to help Dwight Howard develop. Now, is that what they're hoping they get out of him with working with Anthony Davis, who they are reportedly not wanting to trade, or Sarr, or any of their younger players? Will that help them along? I think so. He's one of the greatest bigs of all time. You can't not enjoy the fact that he is going there and going to help them develop some of these younger guys. Is it going to help them win a ring? They're miles away from that. They really are. But could they possibly compete, get a 6 or a 7 seed, and make the playoffs for the first time in God knows how long? Absolutely. And I think it would really benefit them having his tutelage there instead of being cellar dwellers on purpose like they have been doing, because they, like a lot of other teams, are absolutely guilty of these over-the-top tanking maneuvers that they've done over the last couple years to just get themselves in position to grab as many young players as possible, which has now led to the NBA changing their tanking rules for the umpteenth time. Personal opinion here, and I'll leave another question to you guys down here in the comment section today as you're listening. I got to know, tanking in the NBA, doesn't it go hand in hand like PB&J? Is there anything they can really do to stop teams from tanking? Because most of the time, once you're at midseason and you know you have nothing to play for in the NBA, more so than any other sport, because there's 82 games, does it not feel like these teams are just at that point trying so damn hard to just get your money and lose so that they can get themselves in better positions? It just feels that way. I don't know if these new anti-tanking measures are going to work. Let me know in the comments section down below. But that's all of the bigger moves that have happened up until today's recording of this particular podcast. Okay, so as we start to wrap this up, I just want to give you my closing thoughts today, my perspective, the facts, and just the facts on this Boston move, because we've heard a little bit of everything, like we discussed earlier in this podcast. We've heard everybody's opinion on Jaylen Brown, felt like he was the smartest guy in the room, and it rubbed them the wrong way. Many people saw him as the, redheaded stepchild to the Jason Tatum of the locker room. Here's the glaring, obvious answer that no one wants to talk about because it's the boring answer. It's not the, ooh, there's drama answer, the speculation. Here's the honest answer. Do you want to know what my honest opinion on this is? Why they made that move? Because of money. There's no other logical reason why you would do that. There's no other logical reason why you, the mighty Boston Celtics, that just towering leprechaun logo that always looms large over the NBA, that is constantly in the mix for championships, for competitiveness. They are the benchmark, the absolute 100% benchmark for what a franchise in professional basketball should be. They made that trade for that guy for that amount of money. There is only one reason why. You don't need to look at Brad Stevens and you don't need to look at Jaylen Brown. What you need to look at are the new owners of the Boston Celtics and understand that this is going to be the norm going forward in professional sports when hedge funds and investment firms get involved with professional sports. Excuse me. For those of you who don't pay attention to finance, understand this and let me break this down logically for you. What does any hedge fund or investment firm do when they acquire a new asset like a company, like a property, like any type of investment they go involved in? It's this. They try to minimize their costs and maximize their profit to make their investment back as quickly as possible. And considering the obnoxious amount of money that they have poured into buying said Boston Celtics, they look at two guys on their roster who are both making over $300 million and went, which one of these contracts could we get rid of that the fans will be upset with us, but they won't completely stop coming to the games? And they looked and went, well, the fan base really likes Jason Tatum. They love him. They like Jaylen Brown. We're going to get rid of Jaylen Brown. We've had him a year longer. He's not on the same level in our eyes. And that's what happened. It's no frills. It really is. It's no pomp and circumstance to this. It's the truth. And anyone who tells you differently, they are wrong. Trust me, I know everything. I do. When it comes to sports, I know everything. I am a useless sports guru. I am. I know every useless fact about sports that there is to know. And I've watched enough sports in my lifetime, whether it be here in America or abroad in Europe or international, especially if you're watching the World Cup right now, to tell you that when investment firms get involved, this is what happens. And if you think I'm wrong, go look at Dallas, because Dallas can tell you 1,000 different reasons why they felt compelled to trade the franchise in Luka Doncic over to the Lakers. The Lakers. Ew. The Lakers. You traded him to the Lakers. And they say it's because of his weight or his attitude and he doesn't doing all these things. No, it's because you had new owners come in and they saw the amount of money they were paying him. They saw the amount of money they were paying Anthony Davis. And they said, yeah, we're going to get rid of both of these contracts, because they traded him for AD and AD did not last there. They got rid of him as well. That trade has still snowballed it over there in Dallas. The Mavericks look cooked. And I understand if you're a Mavericks fan and you're listening to me what I'm saying right now, and it's been more than a year since that trade, and glancing back like a Monday morning quarterback and critiquing what was done, you can blame the GM all you want. I don't believe it was his move. I truly believe at the end of the day, Dallas got rid of Doncic because they didn't want to pay him that amount of money versus what they were already paying in that market when you have to compete with football. That's what it came down to. It's a money move. What does every investment firm, what every Wall Street guy who is involved in sports, do you know what their favorite movie is? It's Moneyball. They all want to be Billy Beane. They all want to be him. They want to be able to say, I spent peanuts to go out and win a championship, and you had to pay with gold bullion to get at the same level I'm at. That's what they want to do. They all want to think they're smarter to game the system and not spend the money to pay the players what they're worth to go ahead and win championships. And sometimes it happens, and it works. It does. Go look at the Kansas City Royals 10 years ago. They won an MLB championship, and they were one of the lowest payroll teams in the league. It does happen, but it doesn't happen that often because at the end of the day, and all of these analytic nerds need to hear this, no matter what stats or what the cost is that you feel you shouldn't have to pay to go out and win a championship, you do. You have to pay it, okay? Because here's where all your analytics and all you money-pinching nerds end up failing. Going back to baseball, the Dodgers have won back-to-back titles. And the Dodgers have paid more money than they know what to do with on payroll, and it has worked. If it had failed, you'd have that argument, but it hasn't. It has worked to an unfair advantage that now other owners want a salary cap in baseball, and they're not going to get it. We're not here to talk about that today. Let's stay on topic with basketball alone. This is a Moneyball move. Case in point, that is my final thoughts on this. They made a Moneyball move. Boston, that is the reason why instead of being a favorite to go to the NBA Finals next year, you will be lucky enough to get a 5th or 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. Because I'm not saying Mitchell Robinson is bad. I'm not saying Jason Tatum healthy is not bad. I would take a healthy Jason Tatum any day of the week. Hell, I will take a slightly injured Jason Tatum any day of the week. I think any team would. I know Utah would. No one wants to play there, though. But it's the truth. This is a Moneyball move. They felt compelled to do that. And that's the reason why, guys. That's the reason why you don't have him there anymore. It comes down to dollars and cents. It's the only logical way you can look at it. And what I absolutely just grinds my gears as someone who loves sports enough that I have this podcast and I have this platform to put a voice out there on the internet. What grinds my gears is you see a lot of these pundits coming out, and you see a lot of these insiders speculating this, speculating that. It's all unethical at the end of the day, because to me, who cares? What did he honestly do to deserve to be traded? And the disrespect, if I'm Jaylen Brown, the fact that you got traded for someone who is 7 years older than you and at the twilight of his career, it makes zero sense. But also, the bigger question in my final thoughts, I have to ask this. Is Paul George the greatest trade piece in NBA history, given who he has been traded for? Folks, remember, the Clippers traded SGA to OKC for him. He has been traded now for a multiple-time MVP and a Finals MVP. And he got traded for a Finals MVP when his knees have just turned to dust. So anyway, that is my final thoughts on that trade. Stay tuned. In the coming days, we'll be putting out our podcast, just what we think here at the Useless Sports Guru channel on the LeBron possible destination, as well as a World Cup special once all of the round of 16 games have been completed. I will have my thoughts on that, especially with some intervention from the White House to try and save the U.S.'s skins in this World Cup, which I find a little bit unethical, but there's a lot of unethical things going around in sports nowadays. But anyway, I'm Dan. I'm your host. This has been Dan Knows Everything, and this has been our first episode. Thank you for listening. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And just remember, I enjoy this discussion more than anybody. I appreciate you guys if you do take the time to like and subscribe. Thank you for listening to me. I'll see you next time. And remember, do I know everything? Probably not. But have I given you something to think about? I hope so.